From the fine line between stupid and clever, it's the IGN Digigods. Please welcome the patron saints of quality footwear, Wade Major and Mark Kaiser.
You know, Mark, I have to say, I've been saying this for a little while. I was saying it actually some weeks ago, that it's looking as though this may be the best movie year since 1993, but it is really now looking like it. I mean, the reviews for just about everything coming out of first Venice, then Telluride, now Toronto, it's phenomenal. It's like all the movies are supposed to be great. I mean, they're not all getting rave reviews. Obviously, there's some reservations about some of them. You know, Captain Phillips didn't get across the board rave reviews, and obviously, you know, the Fifth Estate, there's some reservations. But still, I mean, at least where like those two movies, people are like, well, it's not entirely great. They're just like, but Tom Hanks is great and Benedict Cumberbatch is great. Looking like a good fall.
Yes, and
it could be one of those few falls that is not depressing for us as critics.
Well, fall is never depressing. It's the summer that's depressing because with each bloated summer, you think that the fall maybe will also fall in line and not be as good, and maybe there'll be even less room for quality films. But the summer ends and the good films come out. And
they
just
do,
happens.
But you know what? I would say for the last 7 or 8 years at least, the fall has not been as satisfying as I've wanted it to be. It's always you sort of get your hopes set up for certain movies, and then they come out and you're like, well, that wasn't really as good as I thought it would be.
Well, you look.
You find the gems, but the big stuff is never really that enthralling. So this year, maybe it seems like that's going to turn around.
I like it. But of course, you know what's going to happen is the films will be really good, and all the Oscar, the only thing the Academy will care about is which gigantic summer blockbuster is nominated for Best Picture.
True.
Because to them, all they care about is ratings for the Oscars. Whereas, you know,
how weird is it though? We've got 2 biopics coming out, one about Mandela and one about his wife.
Well, the one about his wife is I have not seen it. It's supposedly horrible.
No, she's really good. I've seen it.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I've seen it.
The movie's horrible.
Jennifer Hudson, really good.
Well, that's fine, but how's the movie?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know. But she's really good. But it's just weird. How often does that happen? Anyway, you know what? Of all the movies that have been really big at festivals, however, one of them is not going to be eligible for an Academy Award. You know which one that is?
Star Wars?
It's the one that showed up on HBO. Behind the Candelabra.
I know.
Seriously, that stinks, man. Have you seen it?
No.
Well, I've got.
Because I don't have HBO.
No, but I got the Blu-ray right
I know.
there.
You see, okay, let's specify this.
Okay.
I don't have HBO.
Oh, I see.
You have the Blu-ray, which you
see.
did not lend to me in time for the show, which means I didn't get to watch it.
Well, I've watched it.
Well, then you can talk about it.
And it is straight up awesome. I mean, it really is. Apparently, they were not able to. No studio wanted to release this and acquire it for distribution because, as Steven Soderbergh said, they felt it was too gay. You see, that's why Brokeback Mountain was nominated for so many Oscars.
Stop trying to push the gay agenda onto Americans.
Honestly, it's really good. Michael Douglas, who unfortunately has recently separated from Catherine Zeta-Jones because of their respective health problems, putting just apparently an unbelievable strain on their relationship. But this is a great freaking movie, man. It's just a great movie. And it's the performance you never would have expected from Michael Douglas, the performance you certainly never would have expected from Matt Damon. I don't know how much of it really is completely spot on because it is based on Scott Thorson's memoirs, and so you sort of have to take Thorson at his word for a lot of what transpires here. But it really is a great pair of performances, a great film, some of Steven Soderbergh's best work in years. And a fascinating look at a guy who was just an unbelievable icon for so long. And you know, a lot of people used to say, "Gosh, you know, how could people not know that Liberace was gay?" Because the rumors swirled forever, and of course, then they did the Rock Hudson thing and tried to quash them. And he'd go on TV going, "Oh, I love my girlfriend," and he'd do his little thing. And I remember asking my mother at one point before she passed, I was like, how did people not know that Liberace was gay? And she said, oh, everybody knew. They just didn't talk about it. It was just, every attempt to just sort of dissuade, because people didn't care. He was entertaining, he was funny, he had a great show, they loved it, they loved the shtick, the diamonds, the whole deal, the way he played piano. Yeah, people didn't care.
Because he didn't stick it in their face like today's gays do, Wade. That's the problem. They stick in your face the gay agenda.
Oh, there you go.
They will not rest until they have taken over the government.
That's exactly
and made
right.
everybody gay.
Okay. You know, Mark, we got 3 films here that are new films. I just want to point something out. Now, that one that you have, the cover there, and the covers of these 2 films, I have in my hands Drift and Disconnect. What is common to all 3 of these? They're
on Blu-ray?
No, they all do something that is a big pet peeve of mine, and I've never talked about it on the show before, but I'm going to talk about it now.
They have the big head poster.
It's not just the big head poster. It's all the heads in the movie, and they're all looking in different directions. They're all looking in different directions. Now, these 2, Drift and Disconnect, obviously are bigger. They are real offenders. The one that you have is just 2 heads looking in different directions. But here's look, 3 heads, 3 people, and they're all. What are they looking at? They're all looking at different things.
Because they all have different things to do in the
whatever.
movie. It makes it seem like there's 3 different things to worry about, 3 different action points, plots, narrative ways, all coming together.
But it's one of those graphic marketing concepts that is so overused, because you're supposed to look at it and go, oh my gosh, what's he looking at? Something interesting? Look, she's looking at something. Must be something else interesting. Oh, and that third guy, he's really absorbed. Wow, 3 people looking at 3 different interesting things? My goodness, there must be a lot of interesting things in this movie if 3 people are looking at 3 different interesting things. It's the stupidest thing ever. I hate this. I truly hate the concept. It's done. It's overused. Get rid of it. Enough with the heads looking at different things. Disconnect is on Blu-ray and Ultraviolet. Neither one of them terribly impressed the hell out of me. This is another kind of tech thriller, and there are just way too damn many of those these days. I'm a little bit kind of surprised that Paula Patton and Alexander Skarsgård would show up in this. I kind of always thought that they were, better than this kind of material. But whatever. It's these cyber thrillers just all kind of traffic in the same thing, and they all use technology way too much. And ultimately, when all the threads start to kind of connect, they disconnect. And that's the title of the movie is very apt. Drift is really interesting to me, also Blu-ray and Ultraviolet. Boy, how far the mighty have fallen. Once upon a time, Sam Worthington was the guy. He was in 3 of the biggest movies in 1 year, and all of them, either part of a franchise or franchise launchers, including the biggest movie of all time. And now he's in a little surfing movie.
Because you know what?
And he's not even recognizable.
Because people finally realize that this guy is a charisma hole. He is charisma free.
And he was almost the next Mad Max. You know that, right?
Well, they got the Mad Max that they need.
I know, but he was almost the next Mad Max. He was the one when Mel Gibson, when it was you know what, Mel, you're indecisive, you're a jerk, you're an alcoholic, you're a little bit mentally unstable, and you're just getting too damn old, and you're taking too damn long to commit to this movie. Can't do it. Me, mighty God, George Miller, I'm just going to cast a new actor. We're just going to start all over, different Mad Max, and he's going to be Sam Worthington. And everybody's like, who? Oh, an Australian? All right, another Australian. And then Avatar, and you thought, oh my gosh, this guy's taken off. And then suddenly he gets dumped from the Mad Max movie. Not sure why, but Tom Hardy, better choice.
Oh, Tom Hardy's the best.
Yep,
Love
Tom
him.
Hardy, better choice. By the way, there's a new Tom Hardy movie that's been doing the festival
I
rounds.
know.
That sounds interesting, doesn't it? Lock?
Yes, I'm into it.
Just him in a car and a cell phone.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Sweet.
It doesn't seem like much in the log line, but I guess it's great.
You know what? Honestly, you get a great actor, you hand them that kind of a scenario. I'm all over it. Anyway, so Sam Worthington, along with Miles Pollard and Xavier Samuel, don't know who they are, never heard of them. The true story, surfing movie. You know what? Surfing movies, they're all pretty much the same, man. And ever since Big Wednesday, they really haven't given me anything different. Now, this is different only because it is Sam Worthington being a native Australian. It's an Australian surfing movie. And so the waves are a little bit different than they would be in Bali or in Southern California or Hawaii. But I don't really care. Just a group of brothers surfing, and their family relationships, whatever. I grew up with surfers. I'm not a surfer, but it just didn't do much for me. And then Somebody Up There Likes Me is was a surprising little indie hit this year, and I think it's probably a little overrated. But worth checking out. It is. It just blows through 3 decades in the life of a character played by Keith Polson, and it's sort of about a romantic triangle. 2 guys, he and his buddy, and who love this same woman, and all the things that transpired. And what makes this movie interesting is that it's got these little animated tidbits in there. and kind of a real funky style. It's a worthwhile little odd movie, but it is an odd little indie, and it is noteworthy because it is, in fact, an odd little indie.
Wait, real quick. We have the latest from Uwe Boll.
Oh, jeez.
Uwe Boll, the world's worst director, who normally
gosh.
does video game adaptations, has now decided to remake the 1950s kind of classic, as we all know, directed by my step-grandfather.
Ugh.
Suddenly was a 1950s film with Frank Sinatra, directed by Lewis Allen, and it's about a plot to kill the president. And it has been sort of remade or reimagined, also as Suddenly, with Ray Liotta and Michael Paré, ladies and gentlemen. What happened to him? Michael Paré.
Gosh, Michael Paré.
Yes.
Maybe in the Cruisers.
This is
The Philadelphia Experiment.
because it's Uwe Boll. It's going to be two things. It's going to be bad, but it's also going to have a certain amount of cheesy energy to it.
Yeah.
So I would have to say, if this Blu-ray is wrapped in its wrapping,
Yeah.
but maybe sitting in a gutter somewhere, where you can just sort of pick it up and dry it off and take it home,
Sure.
you can watch it.
All right.
Otherwise, I would pass, and of course, I would go for the original from the 1950s, directed by my step-grandfather.
Nice. Well done, Suddenly.
Now, that movie is not based on the Lionel Richie song.
A few television things to cover here. One, Bates Motel, Season 1. You know what, Mark? Good show.
Really? You of all people, I'm surprised.
I know. It's a good show. And a lot of our listeners were like, no, give it a chance, don't be so negative, because I looked at it and I'm like, you know what, this just looks like Hannibal and Bates Motel and all these, let's just get every serial killer movie and let's try to franchise it into a TV show, and it's never going to work because it's TV. You're not even on cable. You can't go to where these things need to go. But you know what? They did it right. Bates Motel is really not bad at all. Put it together really nicely. Vera Farmiga is really good. I mean, she just brings the goods. And the nice thing here is that it really does try to be kind of psychological. It tries to do more with Norman Bates than I think even Psycho did as a movie. It's not like the prequel series to Psycho. Nobody should think like, oh, cool. Where Psycho picks up is where this series leaves off. No, it's a different take. You know. It's a different interpretation.
I'm dumbfounded that you like this.
It's good. It's really good, and it'll be interesting to see where it kind of goes from here. But yeah, there you go. That is Season 1 of Bates Motel, Blu-ray and Ultraviolet. I don't know if you're going to really want to be watching this in Ultraviolet. It is really very nicely shot, very nicely put together, and not bad. Bunch of extras on this thing, by the way. Tons and tons of extras.
Wade, Nashville is the ABC show that is...
This show sucks.
People love this show. This show...
It really stinks.
This show, it's about an older country artist who is threatened by a younger country artist.
Yeah, it's just a soap opera. It's really...
That's what it is. It is a soap opera.
It's all about Eve. It's all about Eve set in Nashville.
That's right.
It's really bad.
And every time I talk to a woman about this show, they just love it. They love the camp and the juiciness of it and the backbiting.
Co-created by Kelly Curry.
Kelly Curry, Oscar winner for Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
So anyway, Nashville complete first season. Connie Britton, Hayden Panettiere. Now this is not on. At least we didn't get the Blu-ray.
No, it's not on Blu-ray.
It's not on Blu-ray, which I find interesting. Anyway, not for guys, all for girls. A couple good bonus features on this thing, including a couple of like behind-the-scenes featurettes, and there's a featurette on the music, which I don't like because I'm not a big country star. Even some of the country music in this show is kind of country, but some of it is like kind of that nouveau poppy country that's not really country anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nashville. I'm a guy, don't like it.
Okay.
Another thing I don't like is CSI whatever. This one's actually called CSI whatever.
Yeah, I know that.
And this is the original CSI in its 13th flippin' season.
Unreal, right?
However, it does give Ted Danson work, and that's good. And it does give Elizabeth Shue work, and that's good
Isn't that wild how you would have thought that this show would just be dead when they lost Mark Helgenberger and what's his bucket? And William, whatever.
Peterson?
Yeah, William Peterson. And now it's like, oh, look, we went and got Sam Malone and the woman who should have won an Oscar for the Nick Cage thing.
Driving Miss Daisy, leaving
drunk in Las Vegas.
leaving Miss Daisy,
Leaving Miss Daisy.
drunk in Las Vegas.
Drunk in Las Vegas.
Anyway, CSI whatever is
Miss Daisy got
a show.
Miss Daisy got drunk and she banged Nick Cage in Vegas. It's a horrible movie. It's a dual sequel.
Speaking of Vegas, sometimes you are surprised when you hear about a particular movie actor who decides to do TV.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you kidding? Dennis Quaid?
Yeah, I know, right?
He's going to do Vegas. You would think that Dennis Quaid would at least warrant a low-level HBO show. Maybe not like star in The Sopranos type of, or Game of Thrones-y type of like high-end HBO, but at least a mid-level HBO show.
Right.
Or maybe a high-end Showtime show.
I hear you.
But are you kidding me?
I know.
Vegas? This is terrible. It's also with Michael Chiklis, who is prone to overacting and scouring a lot.
I feel bad for him. He's never had a woman in his life.
Huh?
Because he's chickless. You see, it was a pun.
That's almost okay. That was almost funny.
Okay, thank you.
Because I didn't know where you were going with it, and I knew it was going to be bad, but then it wound up. It really wasn't horrible.
Okay.
But also, Carrie-Anne Moss is in it. So look, the cast is good. It just feels. Put it this way: if you did not have the star of The Matrix and an agelessly handsome Dennis Quaid in it, and Michael Chiklis in it, you would think that this show is just terrible.
I hear you.
But it's got a good cast, and it's pretty well shot too. The streets of Vegas are nicely watered down, so that the light bounces off the pavement.
Indeedy do.
You gotta love that. But otherwise, not into it.
All right, Mark, I'm going to blow through some foreign, and then you do the music, and then we'll see what we got time to wrap out with there. We're only 60 minutes.
We're like good 15 minutes into the show.
I know. It just feels like it's going so quickly. No, we got plenty of stuff. We got some older movies, and may get around to some British TV and some docs here. We'll see what we can get to. Some amazing foreign stuff this week. Really, just some outstanding stuff. Top of the heap. The new Criterion release of Autumn Sonata, which is just so unbelievably beautiful. Now, I should point out, I am not the biggest fan in the world of Autumn Sonata. A lot of Ingmar Bergman films that I love, a lot of Ingmar Bergman films that just kind of grate on me, and Autumn Sonata is one of those that kind of grated on me for a long time. I have not fully warmed to it, but I'm slowly kind of warming to it. Now, the story here, this is just a grueling reconciliation story, with Liv Ullmann playing the daughter who always lived kind of in the shadow of her great mother, and her mother played by Ingrid Bergman, and one of Ingrid Bergman's last roles. And it is just spill your guts, spill your spleen, spill your bile, just wrestle with this horrible family dysfunctionality. And then on top of that, there's a handicapped sister who crawls along and moans at the most arduous points in the movie. It really, really is a slog. That being said, if you love this movie, there's an on-set behind-the-scenes documentary that is 3.5 hours long. It is more than twice as long as the movie itself. So if you don't buy this for the movie, buy it for the documentary, which is extraordinary. Extraordinary, because you're exposed to the process of a great filmmaker, and notwithstanding the movie, the process itself is riveting, absolutely riveting. A lot of other interesting stuff here, including a conversation between Ingrid Bergman and John Russell Taylor at the National Film Theatre in London back in 1981. And a great commentary from Peter Cowie, who always does great commentaries for Criterion releases. So that is just first rate. The Autumn Sonata Blu-ray is not to be missed. Also a fun movie, War of the Buttons, which is a lovely little French film that I'm really shocked the Weinsteins didn't kind of get more traction out of this. But anyway, it's about this strange little kind of kids' war that takes place during World War II. And it is really quite sweet, very original, has some wonderful music and some pretty decent performances, including from Guillaume Canet, who seems to be in every damn thing these days. So, by the way, Guillaume Canet, of course, was married to Marion Cotillard.
Really?
Yeah. He nailed that one, man.
I know.
I mean, dude is just, man, how do you do that? Violetta Went to Heaven is an interesting little Sundance hit from Kino Lorber that is the true story of a folklore singer from Chile named Violeta Parra, who had a really interesting life. She was impoverished, and then she eventually kind of became this kind of neo-Marxist commune figure, and famous in Europe, and expat in her own native Chile, and all kinds of fascinating little twists and turns to her life. You could almost say this is a little bit like Bound for Glory, the Chilean version. It's nicely done. The lead performance is just absolutely outstanding. It's worth watching if you're into that scene. If the idea of a famous Chilean folk singer biopic is interesting to you, definitely check it out. But I don't think anyone who's not necessarily inclined to that is going to go, I think I'll hold off on watching Iron Man 3 because that Violetta movie sounds really interesting. No.
That's not going to happen.
Jean-Pierre Melville's Two Men in Manhattan stars Melville himself and Pierre Grasset. This is out on Blu-ray from the good people at Cohen, who I love very much because they enabled me to do my commentary for the Bronte sisters. So I'm not going to say any bad thing about any more of their movies ever again. Not that I ever did. I think they are wonderful, and I love their clear plastic Blu-ray packages. It's got a real deal to it, you know.
It's got a real deal to it?
It's got a real deal to it. It's cool. It's different. It's like you want to put it next to your Criterions on your shelf. I think it's awesome. Anyway, this is a pretty slick little film from 1959, the heyday of Melville, and it's a cool little Melvillian thriller. I think it's one of the ones that people probably have not heard a lot of. But Two Men in Manhattan, it's a French UN delegate has vanished, right? And so Melville plays this reporter who has to team up with a photographer and try to figure out where he is. And it's great. It's kind of noirish, and it's kind of thrillery and mystery-like, and it's good. It's classic Melville. You got to dig it. And Melville himself is great. A lot of interesting extras on here, including an essay by a Melville scholar and a critic conversation. It's good stuff. First-rate Blu-ray. Another neat little French romantic comedy called What If, with Thierry Lhermitte in a great...
Terry the Meat?
Thierry Lhermitte in a great supporting role. The other two people I've never heard of, Alice Taglioni and Jocelyn Quiverin.
What? You're telling me you don't know Jocelyn Quiverin?
No.
She starred in the Jocelyn Quiverin story.
This is basically like Adam's Rib, the French version, by the way. And they're not married, but it's about a couple of lawyers who are at a firm. And anyway, it does something interesting, though. It does a thing that Kieslowski did in one of his films. And it looks at how their lives would have been under two different circumstances. So it does want that little kind of bifurcation scenario, like what if this is one way, and what if this way? You know, if he'd gotten the promotion, if she'd gotten the promotion. Really interesting little film. And that's from First Run Features. It comes in their little eco packaging, which is, razor thin, but it will save the planet. I swear it will. And Mark, my pick this week, believe it or not, is split between two movies. Another Criterion and another Cohen. Now, we just talked about a Criterion, we talked about a Cohen. First, I'm going to talk about the Criterion. La Cage aux Folles, Blu-ray, awesome. If you haven't seen La Cage aux Folles, you've missed out on one of the great comedies of all time from 1978. Just an unbelievably classic movie, great Ennio Morricone music, maybe the best film ever directed by Eduardo Molinaro. And it's just wonderful. It's funny. It's crazy. If you've seen The Birdcage, the American comedy with Robin Williams, that's basically a remake of this. It's just wonderful. And Michel Serrault gives the performance of a lifetime in this movie. If you're not into, drag performance and all that stuff, then you're not going to like it. But I think drag is just great. And there is a booklet with an essay by David Ehrenstein.
Yes!
There you go.
And it's a great one, because David is a great writer.
David is a terrific writer.
And a great guy, too.
And then
who doesn't have a car. Can we say that? Can we mention this? So David Ehrenstein, who's a great writer and a great guy, is a member of the LA Film Critics Association. And every time we have a meeting, literally, probably between 72 and 48 hours before every LAFCA meeting, he sends out an email to the entire group saying, "Can I get a lift to the meeting?" Because I guess he doesn't have a car.
Doesn't have a car.
And then was it Peter Rayner?
It was Peter Rayner.
He responded with something very funny, which you might remember.
Oh gosh, that was so brilliant.
What did he say?
I've got to find it now. I've got to find it.
Now we all know that film critics are not like a wealthy lot. unless you're like Roger Ebert or you're Leonard Maltin and you're just constantly writing books and whatever. But so I get that David Aronstein does not own a car, but he's still of a certain age that he needs to own a car. All right, so Wade is going to look. Here's the thing. Wade's going to look up what. I'm going to stall for time.
Let me finish my.
I was going to stall for time and do the music while you looked up the Peter.
Well, my other pick of the week, the other koan is Blancanieves. Blancanieves is a Spanish film by Pablo Berger, and if you don't know, Blancanieves means Snow White. And this is on DVD and Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is the one I was most eager to see because it is this movie is so beautifully shot. It's a silent film. It is Snow White as a relatively contemporary 20th century silent film that takes place basically in the 1920s in Seville, and it is all set around bullfighting, right? Like in this case, Snow White is the daughter of a bullfighter, so he's not a king. He was a bullfighter, so he was a kind of king, and the evil stepmother who takes over the empire after he's killed, and it's just fantastic. It just is absolutely fantastic, and of course the dwarves. The dwarves are like traveling carnival midgets. There's a whole. It's just great. And if you love the whole kind of nouveau silent thing that started with The Artist in many respects, this continues it. It's shot like a silent film. It's executed beautifully.
It's like Guy Madden.
So yeah, a little bit, but Guy Madden's more obscure and kind of cynical. Absolutely fantastic. It's got a making of a featurette on it, a little introduction by the director, and a couple other things. But the movie itself is just fantastic. It's just so gorgeous, and the Blu-ray is so first-rate. I would recommend people buy this. It is a delight you'll want to watch over and over and over again. And the music could not be better. Could not be better. All right, I'm going to look for Peter Rayner's comment. You talk about music.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a week for music. So where do we start? You know what? Let's start with UB40. The Live at Montreux series will not end. You know what? Someone is going to build a skyscraper based on used Live at Montreux Blu-rays. This is UB40. UB40, they are a very successful British act. This was their concert from 2002. You may or may not know a lot of their most famous songs. The Way You Do the Thing You Do. The Way You Do the Things You Do. Had kind of a reggae thing going on, which is kind of fun. A lot of their stuff had a reggae thing going on. Many Rivers to Cross, Here I Am. So that is UB40 Live at Montreux. Sounds great. It's on Blu-ray, even though it's in 2002, so it's a little bit before like the super incredible Blu-ray sound that we're now used to, but it still sounds good if you like UB40. Also, Rainbow. Rainbow was one of those kind of 80s bands. They had a lot of turnover in their personnel, but this is Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow in a DVD called Black Masquerade. This was a 1995 concert filmed in Germany for a TV show, and you'll hear a lot of their famous songs if you happen to know what they are. They do play Smoke on the Water because, again, there's some crossover between Rainbow and Deep Purple personnel-wise, so you do get Smoke on the Water and a couple of their other good songs like Black Masquerade and Hunting Humans and Long Live Rock. So anyway, that's Rainbow. Mike and the Mechanics is a band that had a moment. It was made up of this one guy, Mike Rutherford, who used to be a member of Genesis. And they had some interesting songs in like the 80s, including Another Cup of Coffee and If I Were You and Now That You've Gone. And these guys were very poppy with a little bit of prog rock. They weren't that bad, but I don't think their stuff really holds up that well. Anyway, this is Mike and the Mechanics. This is a concert at Shepherd's Bush in London. And if you like them, you'll like this. But, I don't think their music holds up that well. I mean, they're great musicians, but in terms of, like timeless music, I'm not buying Mike and the Mechanics. Finally, we're going to have, ladies and gentlemen, live at the Royal Albert Hall, Neil Sedaka. The show goes on. Yeah. Now, Neil Sedaka is one of those songwriters from the 60s and 70s. He's a little like Barry Manilow, where he's like kind of super cheesy, but if you read about him and the songs that he wrote, like, wow, he wrote that? Unbelievable. He wrote, in the 60s, he wrote a lot of top 20 hits. His
I
signature
love
song is "Breaking Up Is Hard to Do." That's the signature song.
Walking in the Rain.
Walking in the Rain. Another Calendar Girls.
Best.
Another signature song of his. He also wrote a lot of songs for other people. He kind of died a little bit in the mid '60s, but then in the cheeseball era of like the early '70s, he kind of came back. So Neil Sedaka, this is at the Royal Albert Hall. So it's great. It's got all of his, hits. Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, Happy Birthday Sweet 16, Stairway to Heaven, not that one, the other Stairway to Heaven, his Stairway to Heaven, The Immigrant. So, it's fun stuff. He's so cheesy.
Peter Rayner's comment was, recommend that at the next meeting we take a vote to budget for a livery service for David Aronstein. A livery service.
I love livery service.
That's great.
You know what? I just love the word livery service.
It's just,
how did it do that?
I don't know.
Who came up with livery service? Is that like delivery service? Did they take the D off it?
He almost won a Pulitzer.
David?
Yeah. No, Peter Rayner.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
For what?
For film criticism.
Did he submit himself?
No,
or?
he was submitted. He was like, one of the finalists or whatever. There are only two film critics who have ever won Pulitzers, which is Ebert and Joe Morgenstern. They're the only ones who've ever won Pulitzers. But Rayner came close.
So you're telling me?
Yeah.
You're telling me that Willy Waffle from Willy Waffle's movies?
Correct.
Did not win a Pulitzer?
No, absolutely not.
You know what? I guarantee you that most of these critics who work today, they would rather have. What are you doing? What are you doing?
What am I doing?
You're pulling my mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They would rather have another.
Yeah.
They would rather have another 1,000 hits on the website than win a Pulitzer.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they know what a Pulitzer is, or why it's important, or what it means in somebody's career.
Don't care.
Rather have another 1,000 hits.
There you go.
Well, wait. I would like to go on record as saying that Peter Rayner's comment, although funny, not worth the wait.
No, definitely not. So anyway, quickly, a couple of last foreign language films to make mention of. In the Fog is something. It won the Fipresci Prize at Cannes. If you don't know what that is, doesn't matter. It's not that important. This was also kind of a big deal at the Toronto Film Festival. It's set in Russia during World War II, during Germany is just pounding the crap out of the Russians, and it's basically about the war that the partisans wage against the Germans. It's nicely done. Nothing particularly remarkable, but it is nicely done. That's In the Fog, which is from Strand Releasing. And then the Canadian Oscar nominee from last year, War Witch, by Kim Wynne, which is a really good film. I was surprised. This is from Cinedigm through their Tribeca film label. I was surprised this didn't get any more love from critics groups. To be honest, did you? It's a Canadian foreign language film, but it's all kind of about the various guerrilla wars in Africa and.
It's Canadian. Let's kill someone, eh? Okay.
Yeah, but really, it's forget about it being Canadian. It is actually one of the best looks at the reality of guerrilla warfare in Africa that you'll ever see. It's a beautiful film.
I need to
really,
reload.
Really
Can you please not shoot at me? I need to reload.
Stop.
Okay.
Oh, stop. Okay. Classic movies. Mark, what do we got?
You are saying that because you think Slacker is a classic movie.
Well, it obviously warranted a Criterion release.
Yes, it did.
And Richard Linklater is no slouch, man.
He is. His career is a weird career. I don't know if I really like a lot of his stuff. What do you think of Richard Link?
I love School of Rock. Everything else I'm iffy on. I love School of Rock and I love Dazed and Confused.
And how about the Sunset films? Before Sunset, after Sunset, during Sunset, Here Comes Sunset?
Yeah, I know some people just totally vibe to those. They are a little bit cloying to me.
Although it's an interesting career because he can do... He has a very varied career.
Yeah.
I don't know that his career really developed into anything much. He just sort of does a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Because you got a guy who's done the Sunset trilogy before. I mean, Before Sunset and Before Midnight and Before Sunrise and whatever. So he did those, which are very, very slow and character based and a bunch of people talking. Then he'll do like his early stuff, Dazed and Confused, and of course Slacker, which was his coming out party. But then he'll also do like A Scanner Darkly, which is weird, and School of Rock, which is a bunch of rock and roll funny comedies. And then he'll do like The Newton Boys, which is sort of this misfire of a Prohibition, I think it was, story with Matthew McConaughey. So he's had an interesting career, but Slacker is where it all started from 1991, and it's a day in the life of a bunch of kids in Austin, Texas. and was shot on 16 for very little money. And, it was just a crew of friends and buddies helping them out to get this thing done. And it became a little bit like, what's it called? Clerks.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was 1991 that was sort of that time.
Slacker's better than Clerks, though. Clerks tries to shock too much. Slacker actually is a really interesting. It's an interesting movie. It's a more intelligent movie about its subject than it really has any business being.
Well, you know what
I think that's why it's kind of a cult classic.
It's aimless but not like pointless.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like about it, and it seems very of the moment. It seems like those people were kind of real to a lot of people. It's very because it's kind of like observational in that way. So I do agree that I like Slacker much more than I like Clerks. And it's funny how Kevin Smith's career hasn't really done much either. Really,
no, it hasn't.
And I mean, Linklater's done better than Kevin Smith, but neither of them. It was a funny time in American filmmaking, that early '90s thing, where a bunch of even Robert Rodriguez, a bunch of guys who grew up on Indiana Jones. And they go to film school, they get a 16mm camera for their birthday, and they make it happen. And you really got to respect that. But
totally.
Of course, because it's a Criterion, there's a lot of great special features on it. There's also Linklater's first feature from '88 called "It's Impossible to Learn to Plow by Reading Books," which is on the Blu-ray. There's casting tapes and audition tapes and early film treatment stuff that he had tried to do with the movie. There's home movies. There's a 10-minute trailer for a documentary he did in 2005. A lot of good stuff. Well recommended, Slacker.
And Warner Archive has, they're releasing tons of stuff every single month, and we only get a handful of them. They limit us to 3 requests, so I always pull out 3 from the list that are representative of, I think, what they're trying to do. And but by all means, always go to WarnerArchive.com and check out all the films that are constantly coming out. A lot of them are things that were out of print. If you see something that is for like on eBay for $80 because it's out of print, don't necessarily assume that. Go to WarnerArchive.com. It might be something that they have popped over onto their manufacture on demand MOD line. The Red Badge of Courage is a pretty decent movie. I'm not a fan of the book. I don't particularly like the story. John Huston made many, many other better films. That being said, Audie Murphy, who was a war hero, a real war hero, who even starred in a movie as himself about his own experiences in World War II, here stars in The Red Badge of Courage. So, with John Huston directing and Audie Murphy, starring, it had a real inside cachet at the time. It was like a cute little wink at hey, look, let's take the World War II hero and cast him in this story about the ultimate Civil War anti-war movie. At the time, much bigger deal than it would be today, because all of that is going to be lost in modern audiences. But that being said, look, it's still a decent film, and it is surprisingly faithful to the source material. The Accursed is one of those kind of cool little movies that gets lost, and just because it doesn't have any super major stars in it, and a lot of people just kind of forget that these movies exist. But you know what? Never mind the fact that it doesn't have any sort of major stars in it. It's actually a really, really suspenseful little gem, and definitely worth checking out. It's even in the notes they even make mention of this, that this is a movie that in many ways is thought to have inspired the Ronald Harwood play The Dresser that was made into the movie starring Albert Finney and Tom Courtenay back in 1983, directed by Peter Yates. Great Peter Yates. But anyway, The Accursed it's a 1958 spy movie, and has a lot of interesting little cool edges to it. So it's a cool spy era noir. The Frozen Dead with Dana Andrews. Dana Andrews, one of those guys, he seemed to get everybody else's hand-me-downs for the longest time. And this is a strange twist for him. This is a sci-fi horror movie, of all things, that takes place 20 years after the end of World War II. And the remaining Nazis who are still loitering around are still trying to bring the Third Reich back to life, this time through cryogenics. And boy, is this movie really odd. This speaks to the whole strange kind of B-movie exploitation subculture that evolved in the 50s, which of course we talked about in Schlock, but it's amazing when somebody like Dana Andrews shows up in something like that and validates it. Not one of the great musicals of all time, but Judy Garland and Van Heflin in presenting Lily Mars are lovely. The movie itself is a little bit boilerplate, a little bit routine, but certainly for a musical of the era, it hits all the beats. And then out once again, previously discontinued, based on the Robert Louis Stevenson novel, is Errol Flynn in The Master of Ballantrae, one of those lovely swashbucklers that he did so well at the time. Again, not a great film, but beautifully photographed, really nice Technicolor, and certainly good for fans of Errol Flynn. So that's worth checking out. That's been out previously, and it was also in a boxed set that is also out of print. So if you want to see The Master of Ballantrae, that's once again available.
Wade, be quiet.
Okay.
So we talk a lot about the production code and the pre-code and the production code and what that meant between, let's say, 1934 and 1968, but we have not talked a lot about Poverty Row Studios. Now, Wade, in the late 20s through the 30s, whereas all the big studios, they were doing their big production code films, there was a bunch of little tiny B-movie studios, and they all went under the collective name of Poverty Row Studios.
Yep.
They were very much sort of pre-Corman type productions, shot in a couple days, with very little money. All the independent theaters that didn't book the big studio films wound up booking a lot of these Poverty Row Studio movies. And Kino has resurrected one of the better ones, which is called The Devil Bat. Now, The Devil Bat is with Bela Lugosi. And it's got, it's probably the stupidest premise you'll ever hear for a movie, but it's still awesome because it's The Devil Bat. Basically, Bela Lugosi stars as this cosmetic scientist, and he feels like he's been screwed out of the profits of his cosmetics company, so he creates a special lotion, right? Because he's a cosmetics company chemist, creates a special lotion, and he passes the lotion out to his enemies as a tester. Hey, man, test out this lotion. I'm seeing if it's working for you, you know? So they put the lotion on, and then the lotion attracts these bats, and the bats kill them.
Wow.
That's The Devil Bat.
So I guess this will not
true story.
This will not be sponsored by Herbalife.
That's correct.
Okay.
So this
By
is
the
from
way,
19
Antonio Villaraigosa, former mayor of Los Angeles, now an advisor to Herbalife.
That's called Give Me Money and I'll put my name on whatever crappy product you have. Like, what's that? What is that cosmetics company? I think they're like a pimple cream company, Invicta or in something, and they get the biggest celeb. Like P. Diddy did their infomercial, and Julian Huff did their infomercial. A lot of huge stars do the infomercials for this one particular company. Proactive.
Whatever it is.
Isn't it Proactive?
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with Devil Bat, except for the fact that Devil Bat's awesome, because it's about Devil Bat. You can't beat it. So there you go. Not much on the audio commentary, although Richard Harlan Smith, who's done a bunch of audio commentaries, does a good one here because he kind of gets into Poverty Row Studios and what it's all about and the life of Bela Lugosi. So this is on Blu-ray and DVD. It's a good one if you're want to cheese out a little bit.
The Rank collection, all the great old British films from the Rank studios that's an ongoing series coming out from VCI. VCI is doing a wonderful job getting all that old Rank stuff out, and there's a ton of them this month. The carry-on films, of which there are like 30, 40, I lost track. They're all really, really funny, and it'll be interesting to see if anybody can ever do a complete box set of the carry-on films, because the rights are all over the place. They're not all owned by the same people. It'll be even more of a challenge than the recent Friday the 13th box set, which just required 2 studios to get their act together. Anyway, there are 8 carry-on films on 4 discs on their Volume 2, which are all hysterical. The carry-on films are always outrageously funny. Carry On Behind, Carry On Abroad, Carry On Dick. You write your own jokes. These movies are just a riot. They're just so much fun. And then standalone discs include a couple of Dirk Bogarde movies here. If you're a Dirk Bogarde fan, The High Bright Sun with Susan Strasberg, the daughter of Lee Strasberg, and Dirk Bogarde and Richard Attenborough, very young Attenborough, in Boys in Brown. Dirk Bogarde, terrific in both of them. Boys in Brown, a little bit more interesting because it's one of those social realist films from the kitchen sink realism, the angry young men period. You don't really think of Dirk Bogarde as being an angry young man, but he does it wonderfully. And Richard Attenborough, of course, just absolutely terrific. So that's from 1949, just on the cusp of when British films were going into that new vein. Friday the 13th, Mark. Friday the 13th. Who knew that Rank actually made a Jason movie?
They did not.
They did not.
That's crazy talk.
Nothing to do with it. It's called Friday the 13th, but it's 13th written out in letters, not the number 13 with the TH at the end of it. And this is just a drama about a tragedy that takes place in London, and the interthreaded stories that kind of lead up to it. It's I guess you could in some ways say it's a little bit like something like, I don't know, like Magnolia a little bit. It's an early kind of portmanteau effort from 1933, a little bit more inspired probably by Grand Hotel across the pond. The Man from Toronto, starring the same guy who stars in that movie, Jesse Matthews, who was kind of a star at the time and doesn't really exist anymore. Jesse Matthews in both The Man from Toronto and The Good Companions. Neither of these are particularly great, but if you are a Jesse Matthews fan, and I frankly had never heard of the guy before seeing these movies, the only thing that was interesting to me was Edmund Gwenn in The Good Companions, because I love Edmund Gwenn because he was Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street. So otherwise, these are just mid-level British films from the 1930s, 1932, 33. Early sound efforts and kind of clunky as a result. But if you're a Rank fan, if you're a completist, they might be worth a look.
Speaking of Rank, are we talking about any new movies? Is there anything coming out that people care about?
Yeah, but they literally arrived like in the last 48 hours, and I got to get some to you, and I got to take some.
You never give anything to me.
I know.
You didn't give me Star Trek last week. That was terrible. I want Star Trek Into Darkness, even though I didn't like it that much. I still want it. I'm a Star Trek completist.
I know.
I have my Star Trek blueprints.
I know you do.
I do.
I know. I have my medical reference manual. I know how to perform first aid for a broken Andorian antenna. I could tell you all about the fact that
I have one word, stapler.
That Klingons have two livers, and that Vulcan urine is thick and viscous and kills plant life on contact. I know these things because I've read the Starfleet medical reference manual.
I like the two liver situation because that means I can drink more.
Yeah, that's why Klingons are such alcoholics.
They are.
Yeah.
The Night Visitor stars Max von Sydow. He plays a guy who was wrongly imprisoned for a murder, and then he gets out of the insane asylum and wants to take revenge on the people who put him there. This is just a silly movie. You know what I don't like about this movie is that the problem with the movie is that it's too dialogue heavy. It just bloviates and talks about itself, and get to the thrills, man. Come on. I don't want a character piece. I want an axe going into a guy's head. That's what I want.
All right.
Unbelievable. Although Max von Sydow's in it, and he's awesome. But you know what? If you ever want to see Max von Sydow running through the snow in his underwear, this is the movie for you. And really, who doesn't?
I don't know.
Exactly. Anyway, very plot-heavy, very dialogue-heavy, and not that thrilling. It is The Night Visitor from, it's like 1973. Not a big fan.
We got 3 from Olive Films, and Olive, of course, is really doing such an... I know I say this all the time, but the stuff that they find in the Paramount library is just so great, and these are the things that are never, ever going to wind up in through the Warner distribution deal. Riot. I mean, Mark, come on, get with it. It's a William Castle film with Jim Brown and Gene Hackman. Did you ever have any idea that Gene Hackman and Jim Brown were in a movie together, directed by William Castle?
I had no idea that William Castle and Gene Hackman had ever... To me, they seem like two separate generations of...
I know.
Film people.
Well, it's not directed by William Castle. It's directed by Buzz Kulick, who did Brian's Song. But it's a William Castle film. I mean, he shepherded this whole thing through the Paramount architecture, and it's a prison movie. It's a prison riot movie, and it is just absolutely really really cool. It actually is about a real event that took place in Minnesota, and it's very very it's a great flashback film. It's nice to see Gene Hackman at that age really ripping it up. The Atomic City is a weird little kind of culty film that I had totally even forgotten existed, and here it is again, with Gene Barry playing this nuclear physicist whose son has been kidnapped, and it gets into all of that kind of Cold War atomic era paranoia because what the kidnappers want is not a ransom, but they want the H-bomb.
What does the H stand for?
Hydrogen.
Helium?
But it's the H-bomb, right? We don't talk atomic weapons, it's the H-bomb. That's what they said back in the 50s. Really cool. 1952, just 7 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it really perfectly captures the paranoia of the era in a non-exploitive way. Speaking of non-exploitive, that's something that does not apply to the Ronald Neame-directed movie Escape from Zarain with Sal Mineo, Yul Brynner, Jack Warden, and Madeleine Roux. I don't know who Madeleine Roux was. I've never seen this movie. I've never heard of this movie. But it's surprisingly timely because it takes place in what they say, quote-unquote, a strife-torn Arab state. That doesn't exist anymore. This is from 1961, 1 year before Lawrence of Arabia. I think clearly inspired by the fact that everyone knew that Lawrence of Arabia was on its way. Ronald Neame, having worked with David Lean, produced and directed this, and was clearly keyed into what Lean was doing with Lawrence, and thought, let's see if we can beat him to the punch. And there you go. They made this strange contemporary oil thriller, and Yul Brynner is perfectly fine. Sal Mineo is strangely miscast. Jack Warden is like, really? You're that old? You were in movies back then? Because that's strange. So anyway, those are three perfectly cool movies from Olive.
Good for you, Wade.
Yep.
A couple good documentaries we have down there that you're not talking about. Not that one. The next two.
This?
There's that.
Okay. You know what? Fine. That's fine.
Well, stop that.
Fine. I'll talk.
You just want to talk about movies no one cares about, whereas me, I'm a populist.
Okay. Evocateur, the Morton Downey Jr. movie. If you've never heard of Morton Downey Jr., he died. He died of cancer, but he was like the original big screaming head on television before anybody else had a big screaming head, and he'd chain smoked till the end of time. And this was, late Reagan era, and I used to watch this show all the time. And it wasn't like it was overly sensationalistic. He just screamed because he was just pissed off all the time at the stuff that people were saying. Kind of, in many ways, I guess you could sort of say he inspired, would you say? He inspired a lot of kind of right-wing talk radio and television.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all those guys, everybody came out from Geraldo Rivera to Jerry Springer. I mean, they all, you can really draw a line.
Absolutely. So, I mean, but it's real stuff. Anyway, this is a great documentary about him and about what he did and how he sort of changed the landscape. And it's got a lot of really just great moments from the show. I'd totally forgotten about this show because he had, of course, died. And once he died, he just kind of took his whole legacy with him. But great Blu-ray from Magnolia. And really, not worth probably owning, but definitely worth a rent.
I could not agree more. I could not agree less. Also, to me, Wade, the pick of the week, and what's turning out to be a slow week, it is kind of a slow week for DVDs.
Sort of slow week, yeah.
Is We Steal Secrets. Now, Alex Gibney is an Academy Award-winning documentarian, the guy who did Tactic to the Dark Side. He's done a lot of stuff since. He did the WikiLeaks documentary. This is We Steal Secrets, the story of WikiLeaks. This comes out just right before the Benedict Cumberbatch film, Fifth Estate.
Yep.
But I got to tell you, Fifth Estate, which I have not seen, getting mixed reviews, but We Steal Secrets.
I'm dying to see it.
Fantastic. This is a great documentary. What's interesting about Assange is that, when you really think about this guy, whether you love him or hate him, there's something about him that makes you not totally trust him.
True.
He's got a very murky sort of like, what's your real deal thing going on that I don't really know what to make of him, and the movie kind of gets into that, and I just think that, and it's also what makes Assange so interesting, but it also makes you not know what his motives really are and whether I should trust him or not, and Gibney definitely gets into that. This thing is exhaustive. It's over 2 hours, but it's still great. Gibney knows how to tell the story. He knows how to move it along. It's very complex, but it keeps you totally riveted. I really like this thing a lot. We Steal Secrets, highly recommended. One of the best documentaries of the year. You got to check it out, and you should check it out before you check out The Fifth Estate, because they are
for sure
companions.
Just so you know the real story, because The Fifth Estate is being criticized for playing fast and loose with the facts, which I'm fine with, But
and by the way, documentaries try not to play fast and loose with the facts, but they look, whether you're a documentary or you're a fictional film, you're going to play fast and loose with the facts. There is no such thing as a documentary that tells the unvarnished truth about every single thing it talks about, because it just can't, because everything is seen through the eyes of an individual, a person, a director, who has his own opinion as to what to put into a documentary, what to leave out of a documentary. So it's all going to be like that. But I think in terms of exhaustiveness and just intrigue and complexity and excitement, and you just can't do much better than We Steal Secrets.
Totally. Got a couple of IMAX films on Blu-ray here. One is Ocean Men: Extreme Dive. And it's fine. I mean, this is the closest you're going to get to an IMAX film at home, is watching a nice, big, beautiful, crystal clear Blu-ray. I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of underwater photography, a lot of stunning underwater photography. This doesn't really transcend it, but if that's your deal, then it certainly adds to it. It's sort of, hopefully your TV is big enough, because remember, IMAX is the square frame. So hopefully your TV is big enough. And this is only 40 minutes long, and if you can really kind of crank it up. Audio is beautiful. Audio is really, really nice. Great DTS HD. The one that's a little bit more interesting is Space Junk in 3D. And this is a Blu-ray 3D and a regular Blu-ray on the one disc. Again, I'm not a fan of 3D, but if you're going to do 3D, this is the way to do it. Tom Wilkinson narrates this, and it's a documentary basically about all the crap that's floating around in space that's occasionally falling down, and what's going to happen to it, etc., etc. But really, kind of the 3D aspect of it is pretty cool. It a lot of kind of groovy 3D CGI imaging, and they make the effect work pretty well. So if you're going to be 3D, then own it. And this is a film that totally owns it, and it has a conscience too, which I can appreciate. And from PBS. Life of Muhammad, which is on both DVD and Blu-ray, and given what's going on in the world and what's been going on for the better part of the last decade, and frankly the better part of the last 1300 years, important to know who the central figure of Islam is, and most Americans don't. So you get three. Here are the three sort of chapters here that bear this out: the Seeker, Holy Wars, and Holy Peace. And that's how they divide the life of Muhammad. And if you really are not sufficiently informed about the life of Muhammad and what Islam is and so forth, definitely check this out. This was originally done for BBC television, shown here on PBS, and the Blu-ray is not essential. The photography is awfully nice, and you could watch it on Blu-ray, but at least watch it on DVD. It is enormously informing and informative. And very, very even-handed. It's not going to it's not imbalanced. It's not like slanderous. It's not evangelical. It's very, very even-handed and very, very historically accurate and documented. So it's a nice scholarly documentary on the life of Muhammad, and it'll blow by. It'll blow by. It's only 180 minutes.
Only 92 minutes is a very interesting film called 2 Years at Sea. This is about a guy named Jake Williams who spent pretty much his entire life living out in the sea, and then one day he decides he's going to live in the forest. And there's a documentary filmmaker who filmed it over the course of 2 years, filmed it in 16 millimeter, and followed this guy's daily life through over the years, the 2 years. What's great about it is that it is done with the visuals are done with such painterly care, and it's the story of this guy. He lives such a solitary existence. You feel kind of bad for him, but the way his life is portrayed, at least visually here, without commentary, without crazy voiceover, is just this guy living this eccentric life that is totally his. I mean, I don't know if this guy is living the most natural humanistic life ever, or he's just like a lonely homeless man. But whatever he is, it is conveyed by Ben Rivers in just the most beautiful fashion, and it's a very interesting film called 2 Years at Sea. And it's great. It's totally eccentric and unique, and if you pop it into your machine, you'll be like, what is this? But I'm telling you, you're going to look at it, and you're going to be totally mesmerized.
And then we're going to wrap out a couple of great pieces of British television here. The first is Helen Mirren in Prime Suspect, the complete series from Acorn on Blu-ray. It is a nice, compact, amazingly well-transferred and well-mastered show. And I got to tell you, it's kind of mind-boggling that they could squeeze everything into a set this tiny. I mean, the form factor of this thing, it's like it would normally have been like 2 Blu-rays wide. It's amazing. So, if you're a fan of the show, it's definitely worth upgrading. Definitely worth dipping into this. And some great extras here. Behind-the-scenes special, which is about an hour long, and then a behind-the-scenes featurette for Series 6, which is about 23 minutes long. Really good. Terrific. A lot of great guest performances on this as well. And then this is just outstanding. The 5-part HBO miniseries Parade's End, which is a kind of a remake of what was the Judi Dench was in the original Parade's End years and years and years ago, and it all takes. This is, I guess, the fallout from Downton Abbey. Everybody's all obsessed with Downton Abbey, and HBO jumped on the bandwagon and said, let's tell this amazing 10-year story. And see if we can tap that same audience. And they did a great job. Really, really great performances here, especially from the man of the year, Benedict Cumberbatch, who seems to be in everything. And it's just great. And worth noting, too, written by Tom Stoppard. So this is the cream of the British crop here. And a wonderful snapshot, an amazing time and period. It's really good. Edwardian England at its very, very best on television. And another feather in the cap for HBO. So if you are a fan of Downton Abbey, taking place in roughly the same era and the same period and dealing with a lot of the same themes, World War I and Edwardianism and all that, boy, Parade's End really, really nails it. So Parade's End and Prime Suspect, the complete collection for all you Anglophiles out there. And with that, Mark, we are done this week.
Until then, I don't have an outro.